This is what I'm going to show you how to make. It's a tension set butterfly setting, and the reason I've called it a butterfly setting is because that shape reminds me of a butterfly. Check it out. The stone I'm using is a coloured CZ that is 6mm in diameter. I'm using 1.5mm round silver wire, and I've got a stake here that's the same size as the stone. So if you're using a different size stone, just make sure that you use a stake to make the jump ring that's the same size. So I'll just trap the silver and stake in the vise and wrap it around one complete turn. Make sure that the wire has been annealed, and make sure that you cut the jump ring at the point where it's just turning off there, so that you've got a nice straight, perfectly round jump ring. So you're going to close the joint, make sure it's nice and tight, line it up, and if there's a step there in the joint, then just squeeze the step out so it's nice and smooth. I've cut a small piece of hard grade silver solder, so just flux the joint, and you'll see that I'm using a Smith's mini torch or little torch. This project can be done with a gas only torch, so you don't need to have much in the way of equipment for this project. Whilst the jump ring's in the pickle, I'll make the ring. I've got some half round sterling silver wire here. The size of this wire is 2.4 wide, it's 1.3 thick. The size or the dimensions don't really matter too much. I think it looks nicer when it's quite narrow like this. But what I'm going to do is just make a very plain ring band, and I do it the quick easy way, just with my half round pliers. Start the curve there and just work on getting a nice consistent curve, and make it just a little bit under the finger size that you're nominating. I can kind of make a game of it and try and get it as round as possible, just with the pliers, so you can see there's hardly any gaps there, so it's nice and round. Doesn't really matter, we can tap them out later. So I'll make mine size K, so I'll just run it up the ring stick and just mark it off. So just under the correct finger size, so we can tap it up to the right size. That's it, and solder it. To make sure there's no gaps in the joint. There's a slight gap in my joint there, so I'm just going to run my blade through one more time. And again, use hard grade solder. Now make it perfectly round and tap it up to the right size. And that's how the jump ring should look with the stone. The stone should just go through. So now we're going to turn this jump ring into a setting. And to do that, put a cut where the solder joint is. And then lay your saw blade right across the jump ring and find the direct opposite side, so it's got to be right in the middle. And once you've found that point, just put a little cut there and then just double check to make sure that it is right through the middle. So take your time at this stage and cut almost right through, so I'd say probably around about 80% through the thickness of the jump ring. So just keep checking as you're going, and then it will get to the stage where you'll be able to bend it without breaking it. So hold it with your pliers like so and just bend it with your thumb, and what you're looking for is a 90-degree angle here, so you can see that slightly over the 90 degrees. So just squeeze it a little bit more until you get the 90-degree angle, and you can always check with the stone at this stage just to make sure that it is in the right position. So you want the stone to rest on top of the setting, covering around about a third of the thickness of the wire on both sides. So we can do a slight adjustment later if it's not quite right, but for now I think that looks good. So what we're going to do now is put it back on the solder mat and run some solder into these joints. Flux the joints and flux the solder. Again, I'm using hard grade solder. Let's pick the solder up. I'm using a generous amount of solder as well for this. We don't want to fill the joint, but we want to make sure that that joint is solid for the next stage. So what we're going to do now is make the setting fit with the shank, and that means that we're going to have to change the shape of the joints here, and you've got a couple of ways of doing that. You can use a round needle file, or you can use a round burr. Now the needle file will do part of the job, but what we need to do is create the right curve as well. So the curve of the ring has to be cut into the grooves of the setting. So a ball burr is going to do that a lot more efficiently. So I'm just taking metal off from the inside of the groove. And the ball burr size I've got is 2 mil, so you can use something slightly larger, but the width of the shank was 2.3 I think, so you don't want to go any bigger than that. So you just shape the cut until it fits nicely onto the half round shank. So the setting should fit nice and snug onto the ring like so, and once you've got it like that, set it up for soldering, but make sure that the solder joint, the ring, is at the bottom. So I've also cleaned up the top of the ring as well, and just put some flux onto the grooves. If I put enough flux onto the grooves, then when I place it onto the ring, the flux will go onto the ring as well. And balance it on there. I've got 2 pieces of medium solder ready to go. Just flux those. So now I'll stand by with my tweezers, because as the flux dries it will move the setting around, so just make sure that it stays in place, and I'm looking directly this way to make sure that it is lined up perfectly, and looking this way you can see that it's all square and looking good. So just wait till the flux has finished moving the components around, and now I can pop the solder in place. Okay, so once one joint is done, It's not going to move around anymore, so just put the other piece of solder in place and balance the heat until it's run into the joint, and we'll pickle it. Now I'll give it a clean up and put it in the tumbler before I start setting the stone. Before I set the stone, I'm going to use a ball burr just to take out some metal right in the middle where the cullet of the stone will contact the shank. So I'm using a ball burr to do that. This setting technique has got to be the easiest one to learn. As long as you've got a good steady hand, you've done a bit of practice with your burring and drilling before, and you've got the right tool. So this is a heartburn, and it's a 3mm heartburn. Now if you've not done this kind of work before, I recommend that you do a bit of practice. So make yourself another jump ring, can be any size, and just practice cutting on the inside, making sure that you keep your burring dead straight and really neat. So practice doing that. You'll see that I do everything freehand, and I've got contact with both hands via my middle finger here and my thumb there. Now I do a lot of setting classes online, so you can learn all types of setting there, claw setting, bezel setting, right through to pave setting. But like I say, this is so easy, it's almost embarrassing. So what I recommend you do is give yourself some markings to work towards. So we want a marking in the middle of the wires, and just so you can see what I'm doing, I'll just mark on the inside of the setting, and we'll start cutting. So make sure you cut right in the middle of the wire, so not too high, not too low. And you've got to keep your burr dead straight like that, so not tilting that way and that way. When you're cutting, you're keeping the cut straight, so you're not curving the cut like the wire's curved. It's got to be dead straight. It's also got to be straight that way. So lots of things to think about, so take your time. You'll see I'll do it quite quick because I've done loads of these settings. So start the cut right in the middle. And that's how it's looking on that side. I'll do the same on the other side. Just make sure it's right in the middle, and it's got to be perfectly straight. Okay, we can try the stone now. Okay, the stone's tucked in on one side, and with a push it should click in. I just need to make sure the cullet of the stone isn't going to contact the ring on the way through, so that's clear. That is the weakest point of the stone, so you want to make sure that you don't, that doesn't have contact. And to push the stone in, I'm using my nylon pliers, so these are really handy to have. I do sell them, so check out the website shop, see if I've got any left in stock. But if you haven't got any and you're not going to buy any, you can use half round pliers, half round obviously on the inside where the shank is, and put some masking tape over the other jaw as you're pushing, just to offer a little bit of protection. Okay, so we'll see if it's ready to go in yet. Give it a bit of a squeeze, and what we're after is a click as it goes in. And you shouldn't have to squeeze too hard. Now I'm squeezing harder than I need to, so I'm going to stop there and just cut a little bit more. And before I push the stone in again, I'll just go a little bit deeper into the into the hole in the middle there, just to make sure that the colour doesn't stop the stone going in. And tuck the stone in one side, then with the pliers give it a push, and you hear the click, and that's the click of the stone going in, and that tells me that there's a lot of tension there from these setting bars here. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but as I'm pushing and probing at the stone, there's absolutely no movement, so it's really firmly in place. So I'll give that a clean up and then we'll take a look. And there we have it, set, polished and finished. And as you can see, it's a great design for showing off a gemstone, because you can see all the way around, you get a great view of the stone, and it's also really securely in place. In fact, the only way you're going to get it out is to put a probe in the side there and lever it out. Now, this is one of many courses that I've done on butterfly settings, so check out the other designs on the website. So there's a sample of what I have done recently, and I have to apologise for not posting much on YouTube, because I do spend most of my time putting videos on the website, but I will try and put more on YouTube. So please like, subscribe, and any questions, just let me know. See you next time.